What is going on, everyone? Roughneck2 Charlie here, and I am back with another Battlefield 1 DLC speculation video. Now, I have had a lot of success with my old video, Nighttime Operations, in which I decided to go ahead and say that the new Giant Shadow map was going to be our nighttime map, and it was going to be lit up by fires and everything like that. And I based that off the fact that the Battle of Salé, which is the battle that it's supposed to resemble, took place at about 5:15, 5:30 in the morning. Now, DICE did a good job. I gotta give them credit. It is kind of an early morning, dusky kind of feel to the map, especially when the fog rolls in. But I have decided to hit the books, and I have found a battle that takes place at midnight. Yes, midnight. And I believe that if all of this stuff that I've been researching stands true, we might see our first nighttime map, actual nighttime map, in Battlefield 1. Now, this battle that I am talking about is the second Battle of Marne, which took place in a couple cities, but I'm going to focus on one city, and that's the city of Reims. Now, first, a little background on this battle. Now, this was the only time in World War I where you had significant numbers on the same battlefield consisting of German, American, French, and British. And another thing that makes this battle really stand out is the fact that it breaks all the stereotypes of what battles in World War I consist of. There were no big trench systems, there was a lot of movement involved, and it actually had a decision in the end. There was actually a winner, because a lot of battles in World War I didn't really have much of a decision at the end of it. It was more of just a lot of stalemate, back and forth fighting over the same area again and again. Now, this was a significantly large battle, a very large battle, and since it was towards the end of the war, there was a lot of modern technology, modern tactics, advanced weaponry that was used, and it actually resembled more of an early World War II battle with the type of technology that they had instead of World War I, which I believe will give DICE a lot of creative opportunities to add more to the game, because that's one of the things that they like to do with their DLCs, is add more weapons or add more vehicles. And I think this will give them a lot of freedom to be able to do that, because we're so late in the war and there's so much more of a technological advance than there was, say, in 1914. Now, the city that I'm going to focus on when it comes to this battle is the city of Reims, which was one of the cities that the Germans pushed towards from the Western Front in an effort to win the war completely before America could send large amounts of troops over to help fortify the Allied forces. Now, on this map that I'm showing now, everything in the pink is what the Germans took over, and they're actually attempting to make it all the way to the town of Amiens, which, by the way, is already a map in the vanilla version of Battlefield 1. And the reason it was so important is that was the merge point between the French and the British forces, and the Germans hoped that if they split them through the Battle of Amiens, that the British would head north to the water, and the French would head south to Paris. But this obviously never came full circle, and the Germans never really accomplished their goals. Now, another thing that I think would be really interesting about having a map resembling this battle, and mind you, this was a very large battle, and it did cover a couple cities, and it also covered a lot of farmland that didn't see much fighting over the course of World War I. So believe it or not, there was still large, tall crops of wheat and corn still there, and it made for fighting to be very, very hard for them going through these areas. And what ended up actually happening was some of these farms became fortifications during this battle. So how does all of this tie into it being a possible DLC and being a nighttime map? Well, what ended up happening is during the buildup of the initial battle, which took place from the 15th to the 17th of July 1918, the German commander, Crown Prince Wilhelm, set up a large concentration of troops just outside the city of Reims. There was also a lot of bad OPSEC, which for those of you that don't know what OPSEC is, it's operational security, which basically is how well you take care of your battle plans, your codes, anything like that. Anything that you don't want the enemy to get a hold of, you consider that OPSEC. Now, like I said, really bad OPSEC was practiced by the Germans. They didn't change their codes. The French actually broke some of the codes that the Germans used for their communications, and they still didn't even change them. Also, there was a German officer that swam across the Marne River to scout out the Allied positions and was actually captured with a complete set of the operation orders for the Germans. There was actually so much intel that the French were able to gather before this battle that the French commander, General Ferdinand Foch, thought that maybe the Germans were actually tricking them by giving them so much information. However, they decided to go through with their plan. Now, what their intel told them is that the Germans were going to start their artillery attacks at 10 minutes after midnight. And the German tactics in World War I were basically to artillery a spot, artillery the front trenches or whatever it is, and then their infantry would move forward with the support of the artillery. That way, while they were attacking, their enemies would still be disoriented from the explosions or injured or so on. And this had been a very successful tactic throughout all of World War I. Now, what the French decided to do is that they were to start their artillery attack at midnight. What ended up happening is by them doing so, the German infantry assault was delayed. And what that led to was them having to push forward without their artillery support. And this led to a complete devastation of the German onslaught coming towards the city of Reims. Basically, they just got across the Marne River and they were held there by the French until they couldn't reinforce themselves anymore, and they actually retreated completely and were pushed out of France completely, and then eventually this led to the end of World War I. So with all of that put together, that tells me that there could actually be a nighttime map in Battlefield 1. Now that isn't the only way that this ties into being a possible DLC map for Battlefield 1. The reason I also think that it can is because the DLC is called Thou Shall Not Pass, which actually was famously used during the Second Battle of Marne, and actually appeared on propaganda posters after the battle was won. So in conclusion, this is why I came up with the fact that the Battle of Marne could make its way into Battlefield 1. And to check off a few blocks, it includes the French, which are part of the DLC. The name of the DLC was famously used during this battle, and since it took place so late in the war and there was such a technological advancement, this will give DICE their freedom to do whatever they can as far as vehicles, weapons, and so on. So what are your thoughts? What do you think about having an actual nighttime map? I mean an actual nighttime map, not a dusk one like Giant Shadow, but maybe we could see a map that's lit up by moonlight, or even lit up by the flashes of artillery in the background, and you kind of have to adjust in between these flashes to see your opponents. And another thing that DICE could do that could be really interesting for a map is to use the fact that there were farmlands involved, and they fortified some of these farmhouses. Now imagine having it be nighttime, the moon's out, there's flashes of artillery, and you're trying to run through a tall crop field of wheat and corn or whatever DICE wants to use, but you're running through here and you're trying to assault objectives, you're trying to arm MCOMs that are in these open areas, but there isn't necessarily the type of cover that we're used to, which is machine gun nests or buildings or anything like that. Now this also reminds me of an old Battlefield 3 map called Nebadon Flats, in which you fought in an open area and there was a giant grain silo in the very middle. So for those of you that did play Battlefield 3 and remember that map, imagine having something like that, but it's a fortified farm, and you're running, instead of an open field, you're running through all of these tall crops, and it possibly is at night. So if this is something that interests you, please let me know down in the comments below, or if you just think I'm full of hot air, you can let me know down in the comments below as well. But if you did like this video regardless, please smash that thumbs up button, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. For now, I'm Roughneck2 Charlie, over and out.